Bechlal, you know, who do that. And two of his sons do it. It's very interesting.
Wow.
I think the Hasidim of the Rebbe are the most versatile Hasidim.
Very, very, yeah, that's for sure. But it's such a, you know, they use that word random, and obviously there's nothing random, it's always the Chaprotis, but the Seder, but there's things that you just think are like, that's so random. It's like, yeah, of all things. But they write and teach. Really interesting. I've never met them, must be very interesting people.
I didn't know people still did poetry.
Yeah, they also, okay, right, but you were hanging around there, so you'd see it on the list. You could say, okay, I'm going or not, but it would be there. I agree with you. Okay, when I Vav, usually I don't get to drink my coffee when it's warm. I'll take a sip when it's warm.
Unveiled.
No, it's very good. I drank coffee like most North Americans growing up, putting in sugar and milk and destroying the coffee. And then I here in Eretz Yisrael, he was a student of mine back, and he was older than me. He was a student, very, very close friend from Holland. So he was in my house. I'm making coffee. He says, "What are you doing?" Just couldn't stand it. So I can't do his Dutch accent, but it was a beautiful Dutch accent. I'll teach you how to drink coffee. So he taught me he took me to his apartment and he made me a cup of coffee and said, "You drink this." Oh, whoa. He taught me how to drink coffee. And then he would come here every Wednesday and we would learn Chassidus for an hour. He's unfortunately in Gan Eden now. I mean, I'm glad for him he's in Gan Eden. For us it's hard, but for him it's good. He would come here and learn, and he talked about a certain coffee maker that he gave me. It's an interesting European thing. It's not espresso or something else. So he would sit that's what reminded me. He'd sit and learn and he'd go, Baruch, I can still taste the coffee from the morning. This European. Very, very interesting guy. I'm sorry for but he was a very interesting guy. He and his wife were the first people that brought, I mean, you've probably heard of these, but their time has come and gone. One of the first fashions of the 60s that changed the way people dressed was called bell-bottom pants. It started in England on Carnaby Street. That's where things were happening in those days. The Beatles and all, that's what was. So he and his wife, they lived in Holland. They were the first people that imported bell-bottom pants to Europe. Made a fortune. Made a lot. They lost it later, but they made a lot. And then he became a fashion consultant for a department store. He used to go to Milan and Paris. What's the next fashion? And then they would knock it off in the $100. You pay $100 in the department store for what you'll pay $5,000 in the the whole whatever they call those stores that people with money go shopping.
The boutiques.
Right, yeah. So but he had an eye for this, and so he would be in Paris and Milan, and he would like see what's the next.
He had good taste.
Yeah, he's just a wonderful person, beautiful guy. Became a Lubavitcher later in his life.
From Holland. Originally from Holland.
Yeah, from Maastricht.
Wow.
Not even Amsterdam. He was born in Amsterdam, but he grew up in Maastricht. Lived in Maastricht. What a special guy. Miss him very much. But we were once in Paris together. He was helping me raise money for Yeshiva. He spoke French. He knew Paris. We were in Paris together, and one day we were walking in the street, and he said, "Hey, let's go into this store." So I said, "Some clothing store in Paris. Go, I'll show you something." So he shows me a suit. Now, in those days, this is 35 years old. In those days, so the suit was 1,500 euros. It's a lot of money for a suit in those days. So I said, well, I don't understand you. Why would anybody pay 1,500 euros for this suit? So he said, feel the material. So I feel okay. You know, but what do I know about material? So, okay. So then he said something very interesting. He said, what's the difference between a Toyota and a Mercedes-Benz? So at the beginning, they'll both get you to where you want to go, right? But the Mercedes-Benz will drive 3 times as far as the Toyota in the end. The engine will last 3 times as long. So that's what this material is about. I never understood, like, they're just ripping these people up. He said, no. If you wear this right, he said, knowing these things, if you wear this right, which means you wear it, then you hang it up. You always give it 24 hours to breathe. You never wear it 2 days in a row, ever. Wear it a day, and then put it there. You can wear it 1, 3, 5, 7. You have to give it 24 hours to breathe. This is, it'll last 25, 30 years. So, okay. Now, of course, the guy who buys it wears it for 6 months and gives it away because he needs a new one. But that was his. He knew that stuff. It was very interesting. I wouldn't know, but I can't afford it anyway. Can't afford a Mercedes or can't even afford a new Toyota. So okay, let's go. So let me ask in Vav a very powerful question. The very fact that the king is in the field arouses in you and I a desire to go see the king. So then, why are we saying that it's only an Asinas Koyach and it's not a Hisaris? It's really a Hisaris. It's really an arousal from above. Rabbi kicked the feet out from under everything we were saying the whole night, except that one time. Right? But the Rebbe says Hisaris and Asinas Koyach. And then he never mentions Hisaris again. Well, now we understand why the Rebbe said it that first time in our space. It really is a Hisaris. And in order to understand how it all works, so the Rebbe told us that the Melech is the lave of the Am. And in order to understand how this works in terms of Elul, we'll see how that fits into what we want to try to understand. The Rebbe started yesterday, what we had just begun was understanding the union of Kel, the Yud Gimel Mitzvah Rachamim. The Rebbe was explaining the idea of the Yud Gimel Mitzvah Rachamim, the first being Kel, which therefore contains within it the koyach of all of them, and it's the roish, it's also the makor, the source of all of them, and is koilel all of them, incorporates all of them. We're very used to that language relative to the roish of something. And what's Kel? So the last thing we saw yesterday, I'll just read the last few words on Shin Samach Vav, and we'll go to Shin Samach Zayin, which we already saw yesterday, but we'll see it again quickly. Of Kel Havaya v'Ya'er Lanu. What's Kel? Orein Baruch Hu Mamish. It's Or, infinite godly light, not clothed in any kelim, not limited by virtue of the fact that it expresses itself in some finite way. Even though you're talking about Elokus, but say that okay, Yoelam Atzilus is a place where godliness expresses itself in finitude. There's 10 spheres. Still, it's the Eibishter. Yoelam Atzilus is not a created world. Eilam Atzilus is the world of the Creator, not of the created. Created begins in a world called Bria, world of creation. And Bria Yesh Mi'ayin, that reality of the creation of something from nothing, so to speak, that happens when Malchus of Atzilus gives birth to Eilam Bria. Malchus of Atzilus is Elokus. It's the Eibishter. But there's 10 spheres, right? The Eibishter allowing himself to be expressed in kelim, in vessels, and those vessels express unique and individual expressions of godliness, chesed, gvura, tiferes, etc. They're all kalul in one. They all incorporate each other. That's why you can talk about chesed shebegvura and gvura shebechesed, like we do in Sfiras Eimer. Right? So they're not in any way, shape, or form contrary to the notion of God's oneness. But there's 10. God's so one, he can be 10 and he's still one. It's not in any way, shape, or form a contradiction to his oneness. Right? The Mashal Brat is like light shining through a latticed window, the sunlight on the carpet. How many boxes of light are there on the carpet? 10. Okay. How many suns are there? 10 suns? No, it's all the same. It's all the same light. It's just expressed in a differentiated way by virtue of the latticing of the window. Okay, so the kelim allow the light to express itself in different ways, but it's all the same light. Interesting, not the source of the kelim is also the same as the source of the light. It's also a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why we say Ki Havayahu Elokim. Yud Kei Vav Kei, the source of the light is Elokim. The source of the Elokim, plural. God's name is plural, right? And it's conjugated in the plural. Elokim Kedoshim, holy God. Even though it's plural, it's not holy gods. God forbid. It's holy God, but it's conjugated in the plural because the word Elokim is plural. Why is the word Elokim plural? Because it's that aspect of God that's responsible for plurality. What's that? Kelim, the source of vessels. Okay. What the Rebbe here is talking about the light. What's unique about the light? The light is so powerfully connected to its source that on a certain level it's indistinguishable from its source. And that we say it's me'ein ha'ma'or, it's like the ma'or, the luminary, and it's davuk l'ma'or, it's connected to the ma'or, because of course light has to be connected to its source. If it's not connected to its source, it ceases to exist. That's why we use light as a mashal for godly reality. God's not light, God's God. Right? Light is a mashal, it's a parable. So the level of kel is a level of very powerful infinite light. U'kamei etzem, and it's light, that means it's like the essence of God. Kamei shekos, kemavur b'kamam kemis, as is explained in a number of places. We saw this at the end of the show yesterday. Chiluk bein or l'shefa, the difference between or and shefa. What's shefa? It's all or, but what's shefa? Shefa hu shemashpia mitzam sematzmei l'fi erech ha'makabel. Shefa is that the one giving over this influence limits himself in a way that's commensurate to the one who's receiving that from him. So if it's talking about intellectual light, so the teacher has to express his intellect in a way the student can understand it. Right? That's the whole idea of the teacher. Does the teacher understand it on a different level? It might very well be, but he's not explaining that to the student. Why? It's not what the student can understand at this particular point. Okay, that's called shef. Or is just the unlimited, infinite expression of it, not in any way, shape, or form tailored for the kli, for the vessel. And more is closer. Shefa is shayach to where the or is going. Or itself is relevant to where it's coming from. It's closer to its source. Ubekol echad misra, and in every single Jew, me'ir giluiz. This level of revelation, kel, shines, specifically during the Semei Tshuva, but all the time. And now the Rebbe is going to say, not only does it shine in us, that level of godly light is a very powerful part of every single one of us, existentially. Not because we've done something, but because we are something. Furthermore, Shagilui the Shem Kel, this revelation of the name Kel, of this infinite godly light, that exists in every single Jew, who Hasar is the minister, Vameshal, the governor, Shebekirbai. It rules them. It's a very, very powerful part of them. And interestingly enough, that's what one of the explanations of the word Yisrael. What does the word Yisrael mean? The Rebbe explains here. The Yisrael, who, Oisius Yud. Yud is a state of constancy. A pu'ula, an action that continues constantly. Yud in conjugated verb can mean one of two things. It can mean future, right? Hu ya'aseh, he will do it. Or, like a pasuk in Eiv that Rashi explains in the following way, and is quoted twice in Tanya, once in Tanya, once in Shaykhut Ve'emunah, to explain the same idea. That Yud can also be a notion of constancy. Kacha ya'aseh Eiv, the pasuk says. Thus Eiv, it doesn't mean Eiv will do, it means Eiv does and will continue to do. He always does this. That's also the conjugation of a Yud. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. What's the pshat of that name? Simple pshat meaning of that name. Two different meanings. Because the Kei Vav Kei can either mean to bring into being, right? Lihiyot is to be, lehavot is to cause to be, which you and I can't do, only God can. You and I can't give being to anything. So lihiyot is to be, lehavot is to cause to be. Mehaveh would mean he causes to be. So the word yud and then K vav K means he is constantly causing to be. He's constantly bringing into being. You say that in davening every day when you say Umechadish b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshis. He renews every day, which means every macrosecond, ma'aseh bereshis. Right? Reality is existence. Creation is constantly being renewed. It's not a static picture. It's a motion picture. What's a motion picture? One image after another image after another image after another image after another image. Right? What's in between each image? A non-image. It's very clear in 35 millimeter film. You can see the non-image. Right? Digitally, I don't know how it works, but it's 010101, I guess. I don't know how that works. But in 35 millimeter film, so there's a picture, static, and a little piece of vinyl, and another picture. When those pictures are in motion past the light that's shining through them, so your experience on the screen is movement. Right. But what it really is a state of being, a state of non-being, a state of being, a state of non-being, a state of being, and a state of non-being. What does that allow for? Change. So to reality. Reality is constantly coming in and out of existence. Right? So that's what when we say that's what we mean. It's not that the Eibishter creates the world anew every morning at 6 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Right? It means that at every macro moment, the world is going in and out of existence. And that's why you and I experience change. Otherwise, it would be static. It would be a picture, not a motion picture. Okay, what's a motion picture? A series of pictures. But there has to be a state where one picture ends, so to speak, and the other begins. Right. Okay. That's what allows for the motion of it all. Which is so fascinating. So, Gashmias, we have, what mashal they used for this before there were motion pictures, I don't know. I mean, the best, those books you had when you were kids and you would turn the page and the guy would run across the page and it was a lot of fun. Okay, so what's happening? Well, he was in a slightly different place each time. And as you go like that, you don't see the non-existence in between each page. You just see the guy moving. It's probably like this. You see the guy moving across the page when you do that. And kids go, wow, that's so good. Right? Okay. So I guess, that's what they must have done in the caves.
Why, for reality, why does there have to be that state of non-existence between each?
There doesn't have to be. It's a very good question. It doesn't have to be. Nothing has to be because the Yeshiva can do whatever he wants. But and the Rebbe actually talks about it. The Rebbe talks about it. There's a secret in Nunbex where the Rebbe talks about it. I don't remember which week. It doesn't have to be, but it is in order for you and I to appreciate the transition from one state to another. In order for one state to be changed into another state, there has to be a non-state in between, right?
Is that like
there is a space in between my two hands, right?
Is night and
right?
day?
They don't. Yeah. There is a state in between my two hands.
Yeah.
Right. There's a space. You and I can't see the space.
On an atomic level, let's say. Yeah.
No, if you turned up the microscope path, you'd find a space in there, right? I just can't see it with my eyes, but there has to be a space. Why does there have to be a space? Or else this just became one hand. It's not. It's still two hands, right? There has to be a place where this one is differentiated from this one, or else they just became one. Well, that doesn't happen in Gashmias. This doesn't happen. They're together, but they're still two. So in order to create, again, in terms of how we understand reality, but the Eibishter did it that way so that you and I can understand it that way. He can do anything he wants. He could go straight from Atzmus down to a worm crawling across the grass after a rainy day without any levels of godly light in between and any worlds in between. But then you and I would have nothing to talk about, really nothing to understand.
Let's say you're talking about night and day. Is the night the state of non-existence, or you're saying even in between night and day there's a state of non-existence?
Well, every moment, right? So I mean, you're talking, the transition from night and day is gradual and subtle. Yeah. So halacha has a very difficult time describing that. So we have something called Seisatei Chavim. Okay, so that everybody agrees is the beginning of the night. Well, when is that? How long after sunset is that? 18 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 35 minutes? Generally in Lubavitch we say, to be sure, 25 minutes. You'll go to Shtiblach, they'll daven after 18 minutes or 20 minutes. Okay, fine. Probably a good idea if you're Lubavitch, if you daven in that minyan, to say Kriya Shema later again in the night. Just to be sure. 25 minutes. The Rebbe, interesting enough, asked 35 minutes. Okay, so if you go to 7-7, you see enough. The first round of Marv starts 25 minutes after Shkia. Yeah, the people coming to 7-7, they have Marv. So the minyanim under underneath the Bible shul, 25 minutes after Shkia, all the minyanim will start. Anybody who has a chiyuv, he'll grab an amud, then he'll start davening. Fine. There's another round of minyanim when those finish 10 minutes later, 35 minutes after, because the Rebbe asked for 35 minutes. So what exactly, when does night begin? Okay, so that's fluid because of the nature of dark, light. It doesn't all of a sudden it's light out and then it's dark. It doesn't work that way. Okay. But each of those moments is working that way. So moments in time. It was Tafshin Lamed, Yud Shvat HaGodel. A lot of people came from Eretz Yisrael to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe made a special for Brengen Sunday afternoon for the people who come for Shabbos, and then they were leaving, and the flights to Europe leave, evening time. Flights to Eretz Yisrael, flights to Europe. So this was Tafshin Lamed. So what's that? This is 54 years ago. It'll be 55 years ago. So the Rebbe made it for Brengen for the guests. And at a certain point, everybody started looking at their watches, trying to figure out whether they could, when do they have to leave to go make their flight. The Rebbe smiled and said, why is everybody nervous about missing your flight? And the Rebbe talked about what we were just talking about. The world comes in and out of existence every macrosecond. And he said, the plane that you're going to step on doesn't even exist yet. Why are you worried about missing it? It hasn't come into existence yet. Now, what's a little frightening is the plane you're on is going in and out of existence as you're flying. Okay, but so are you, so you don't notice. That's how existence works. That's how electricity works, right? Alternating current, right? There's not a, there's yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Okay. So in every one of us, the other pshat in Yud Kei Vav Kei decision is hoveh. The word Kei Vav Kei can also is just that word meaning hoveh. What does hoveh mean? Present. Present tense is hoveh. Avar, hoveh, atid. So what's the Eibishter? Yud and then hoveh. Constant state of presence. There's no time. You and I, interestingly enough, the one state of time that doesn't really exist is the state of present. The present is simply the future turning into the past. There is no state of present per se, even though that's what we experience all the time. I am talking, okay, Beseder, I'm talking, fine. But by the time you hear me talking, I've already talked. The Eibishter is that constant state of presence. That's also a pshat in Yud Kei Vav Kei. But that's what the Rebbe is saying here, that the Yud, if you look in footnote 31, the Yud, B'Likuti Torah Sham Yud Mara al Hasmodas HaPa'ula, the constancy of the action. Just like the Rebbe explained, the author Rebbe explains, same author, right? Balatanya, B'Likuti Torah. He also explains in Tanya, based on Rashi and Iyov. Hainu Sha'inyan Desar Kel, which we're going to see in a minute, that your minister is kel, hu tmidi, it's constant. Okay? So Oisius Yud Sar Kel, Bezel Sha'bitul Elokus, a Jew's nullification to Elokus, Shebachol Echad V'ech Yisrael, hu bitul shalomayla mitam v'das, is bitul that's beyond intellect. It's not a level of bitul, it's not a level of connection that is a function of my intellectual understanding. It's essential. It's who I am. In order to appreciate it and experience it, I might have to think about it because after all, thinking is where, that's the place where my conscious experience begins, in thought. Okay, that's where consciousness begins. Okay, but there's a super conscious level of you and I that's connected to the Eibishter in a completely super rational way. Not based on our intellect. I have to think about it in order to appreciate it, just like your relationship with a parent. Your relationship with a parent is not based on intellect. You don't have a relationship with your parents because you've come to the intellectual conclusion that they're worthy of a relationship. You have a relationship with your parents because they're your parents. As you grow older, you have to develop an appreciation of what parents do for children, and then you'll understand why you might have an obligation to honor them. And that'll take some time. That's a conscious decision. Right? It's a conscious understanding. But the connection isn't because you've come to this intellectual conclusion. My goodness gracious, why is my father my father? He's my father. It's just completely transcendent of Chabad. My father only becomes my father once I become about, whatever, pick an age where I can understand that he's my father. Certainly not. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so too with the Eibishter. So our true connection to the Eibishter, our true bittul to the Eibishter, the fact that we are simply an extension of him is absolutely l'mayla mitam v'das. That means we have a natural, existential bittul. Bittul meaning appreciation of the fact that true reality is him and not me. Bittul does not mean I think I'm a nothing and worthless. That's Yeshus. That's absolute focus on self, and I'm a nothing, and all I think about is myself and how I'm a big nothing. That's the opposite of bittul. Bittul is an appreciation of the fact that existence is the Eibishter and not me. And what does that mean? That means that I'm an expression of something quite astounding, quite amazing. And what's my agenda in life? My agenda in life, hopefully, the agenda of bittul is to express his existence and his agenda as opposed to my own existence and my own agenda. Working God into my agenda is not bittul. That doesn't mean it's not that I'm not doing good things. I'm doing good things. I'm eating kosher food and keeping Shabbos and doing all sorts of good stuff. But I'm still doing it mitzad my own understanding of what's good for me. Okay, so that's good behavior. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's much better than doing the opposite. There's no comparison. On the other hand, you can't say the person's butthole. They're doing it because they want to be considered an upstanding religious person in their community, or whatever the reason might be. Okay. Bittul is, the agenda is the Eibishter's agenda. What's important in life? What does the Eibishter want? What does the Eibishter want from life? What does he want from me? What does he want from the world? What does he want from time, space? What does he want from all of this? And try to connect to that. So each and every Jew has an essential connection to that notion. Where does that come from? Sarkel. That's who we are. That's what Yisrael is. Someone whose essential being is Elokus. Ki b'Yisrael, in Yisrael, who gilur insert baruch hu atzmai mamish. There is a revelation of this infinite godly light itself, mamish, not ki'ilu, right? Right? That word that some people they talk. Well, it was like really, it's like he's like a good guy, no, not like. In Hebrew, it's ki'ilu. People say, "Hu ki'ilu alach le ki'ilu to the store." Ki'ilu, no. What do you mean? Ki'ilu walked to the ki'ilu store. What does that mean? He sat in his chair and thought about walking to a store. No, he walked to the store, didn't he? Mamish. Okay, so mamish, not ki'ilu. This isn't a nice idea that makes us feel good and fuzzy and that's good, and then we don't do anything with it. No, real. Who are we really? With this little piece of right now, the Rebbe's talking about that aspect of kel in every single one of us. Where this level, might we be higher than that? We'll see as we go further in the Mimer. But there's a level of every single one of us, which is this infinite godly light, and that's the most powerful aspect of it. It's of us, it's the Sar, it's the minister, the governor, that which really is responsible for who we are. That's all super conscious. I might have a very hard time bringing that down into my conscious reality. Well, the first way I can is by at least understanding that's who I am. If I understand that intellectually, at least I have a fighting chance to bring that down into my experience. If I don't understand it, there's no way, because I don't think I'm that. I think I'm just a hunk of, a bunch of bones. וזהו שביטול אלוקות שבכל ישראל הוא ביטול למיילו מטעם ודס, כי בישראל הוא גילוי האין סוף ברוך הוא עצמאי ממש של למיילו משתלשלוס, a level that's beyond השתלשלוס. What does that mean? Beyond the four worlds. Ishtalshlus, it means the downward emanation of godliness in the four worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of form, and the physical world that you and I live in. What's in the world of Yetzira? Most angels live there. What's in the world of Bria? Highest levels of angels live there. What's in the world of Yetzira? Gan Eden Tachton. Souls go there when they leave this world. Right? The highest souls go to a level in Elam Abriya called Gan Eden Elyon, upper Gan Eden. Hopefully most of the souls that started off in Gan Eden Tachton, they're elevated and get up to a point called Gan Eden Elyon. What elevates them? What their children and grandchildren do down here in Elam Hazeh. It helps elevate them. Saying Kaddish for them helps elevate them. Doing mitzvahs, giving tzedakah in their benefit helps elevate them. Right? That's why we do all those things. Right? I mean, we talk about Ilui Neshama, an elevation of the Neshama. What do we want? We want the Neshama to go from one level to another level, meaning appreciate godliness even more and more, have experienced a more powerful revelation of godliness. So the soul can go to a place, end up in a place called Elam Abriya, Gan Eden Elyon. Right? So then, when you go to Shul on Shabbos in Gan Eden Elyon, Avram Avinu is davening Shachris, and Yitzchak Avinu is Nabal Kara, and Yaakov Avinu davens Musaf, and Moshe Rabbeinu for brains. It's pretty good up there. They say one moment up there of pleasure. We just read it a few weeks ago, 4th chapter of Pirkei Avos. One moment of pleasure in Elam Haba is greater than all of the pleasure that could possibly be experienced in all of the history of the existence of this world. All of the intellectual, emotional, physical, spiritual pleasure that could possibly be experienced, not by one person, by everybody who's ever been in this world. One moment of Gan Eden is more pleasant than that. Wow. Must be nice. Through the revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, Shebe'elu, I was explaining what's going on around us right now, right? As we're thinking, they didn't put out Ragalach today. What's going on? Maybe we're not thinking that. Ki b'Yisrael, sorry. V'al-yedei gilu the Yud Gimel Rachamim shebe'elu, shereishisan, their head, u'mekaram, their source, u'chlalusan, and their whole incorporated reality, hu kel, mis'ara u'mizgala bechinas kel shebekol echad misrael. It's revealed, it's aroused and revealed this quality of kel that's in every single Jew. That's what's happening inside of us, so to speak. Am I able to open up to it? That's hard work to open up to it, okay? But the only way I could possibly open up to it is by first appreciating what's the fact of what's really going on in my life. So now I could be so busy with other things that I don't have time to relate to this on a conscious level in any way, shape, or form. So then it's not going to affect me because I'm living down here in conscious reality. And here we're talking about this super conscious reality that's there and is being revealed in a very, very powerful way. Am I aware of that revelation? Revelation doesn't mean it hits me over the head. Revelation means something is more easily, it's easier to be sensitive to it. The revelation of God. There are places where God is revealed more than other places in space. Eretz Yisrael is a holy place. Does everybody in Eretz Yisrael feel the holiness of Eretz Yisrael? No. Do many people feel it? Yes. Birthright trips don't, they do. They now, birthright trips to Eastern Europe to see, destruction. But most birthright trips, what do? They bring you to Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because it affects Jews. Why? I don't know. But it is very interesting. What's the statistic? This was 10 years ago, but I assume it's the same. Right? The statistic of what they wanted to see is birthright working or not. It costs a lot of money. Right? So is it working or not? Just Derech Agav, whose idea was this birthright?
Steiner.
It was the American, Allison.
Arik Sharon. Arik Sharon said, you have to bring Jews to Eretz Yisrael. And he talked to some of his friends. Adelson is a Likudnik, so he probably talked to Sheldon Adelson. But the big money is a guy from Massachusetts. He's the main money of birthright, who hates Lubavitch, which is a problem because Lubavitch is bringing more people in birthright than anybody else just because we're on campus. So, but anyway. So he has that issue the whole time. But anyway, that's the birthright. So they want to see is this working or not. So they started doing statistics on the birthright graduates. Now, there's other things involved, obviously. The kid who goes on birthright obviously has a little bit more Jewish identity than the kid who won't, etc. But birthright graduates had a 50% less chance of intermarrying than a kid who didn't come on birthright. Just birthright. 10 days in Eretz Yisrael, running around in buses, and most of the birthright trips are not bringing them to particularly holy parts of Eretz Yisrael. They're spending as much time in the pubs in Tel Aviv as they are at any holy. They're certainly not going to Hebron. They're not going to the Arizal. They're not going to any of those places. Right? They'll go to the Kotel for sure. 50% less intermarried. That's an amazing thing. And simply, who knows what? There's all sorts of variables. Simply, bringing a Jew to Eretz Yisrael, traveling around Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael affects that Jew because it's ours. It's shayach to every single Jew. Eretz Yisrael is Yom Tov in space. Yerushalayim is Shabbos in space. There's holy time. Everybody knows there's holy time. No one has a problem with that. People do have a problem with holy space. They don't believe there should be any difference between one space and another space. Isn't God everywhere? Well, God, of course God's everywhere. Isn't God in every time? Of course God's in every time. So why are you keeping Shabbos? It's all the same. It isn't. There's a place in time called Shabbos, which is different than every other place in time. There's a place in space called Yerushalayim, which is different than every other place in space. Yom Tov in space, that's it. So it's special. It's a special place. And it affects people. Okay. It does. That's why, if you can't bring them to Eretz Yisrael, what do you try to do on the college campuses? Get them into Chabad house for Shabbos. That will also affect them. Like Shabbos affects them. Like, why? Because they're Jewish. They have this hell inside them. It affects them. Are they aware of it? Not aware of it? It depends on the kid. Right? Some, right away, it just clicks because there's not as much stuff covering up who they really are. And so it just somehow, they're lucky and it just clicks and they start coming back to Chabad house every Shabbos. And they bring their friends. They love it. And they become part of the show, and then they become best friends with the shluchim, and that kid just, wow, Baruch Hashem. Other kids, they come for every Shabbos, but they're fine, they leave Shabbos table, and they go to the bars and do whatever they do, but they were at Shabbos, they were Kiddush every Friday night. It affects them, Baruch Hashem. And who do they meet there? They meet Jews, it's also important. Kelly, where's it coming from? It's coming from this place in us that's essentially connected to the Eibishter. So there are other levels also, other than this level. The Rebbe at this point is explaining, he wants to explain the Yud Gimel Mizrachim, how are they shaykh to a Jew? Oh, because the Yud Gimel Mizrachim are an expression of this absolutely powerful inner, very, very, and not absolutely essential, existential part of every single Jew. There's a higher level, the essence of every Jew, which we're going to talk about also in the mind. But there's this level of every single Jew. And it's revealed in Elul. V'zeu avodah the Elul, who ani ledodi. That's why the avodah of Elul is, and we'll understand this even more later in the Maimon, but ani ledodi. Even though the revelation is, the arousal is from a revelation from above. We thought ani ledodi meant that the Eibishter doesn't help me at all. I have to do it all myself, and then he responds. No. We learned that no, there's an asinas koyach. There's an empowerment. The Eibishter does help us. The winds at our back, but we have to do it all. Now the Rebbe is saying something even deeper than that. It's much more than that. There is an arousal from above. So how can it be ani ledodi? Oh, because what's the arousal from above? Look what the Rebbe says, even though we're going to understand this more. Well, yidei gilui milamaylo. The arousal comes from the revelation from above. What's that? Kel. The Eibishter, all of a sudden, that kel that's in every single one of us, which might be somewhat silent, starts to make a little more noise in Elul. And I have to be less sensitive to pick up that energy. I still have to be somewhat sensitive, but less sensitive than usual. That's gilui. Gilui, it means that I have to be less sensitive in order to pick it up. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is a gilui milamayla, a revelation from above. I think most of us would say that if I don't feel something on Yom Kippur, it's because I lack sensitivity. Whereas if I don't feel any godliness on a regular day, I say, okay, lack sensitivity, but it's very, very hard. I think we're very impressed by people who are sensitive to elokus on a regular day. That's a lot of hard work. Yom Kippur, if I'm not sensitive, I wonder what's wrong with me. If I'm not sensitive on a regular day, it bothers me, but I understand why that's happening. Nefesh Abahamis, Elam Vehester, concealment. Okay, I get it. Doesn't mean I should be happy with it and accept it. No, I'm going to fight through it. But it's hard work to develop a sensitivity for godliness in this world. It's years and years of real work. Yom Kippur, it's all there. How can you miss it? That's revelation. Mendel tells a story that in the camps, so he had to daven Baal Peh. They didn't give him a siddur or a machzor. Okay, so during the week, fine. How do you daven off by heart on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? But he said it was actually better davening because he had to really think about what he was saying to remember what came next. Right? So he said he was davening on Rosh Hashanah and he was saying the famous piyut, Kol ma'aminim, all believe, Kol ma'anim shu ke'elamuna, right, etc. It's through aliphabetes, 2 aleph, 2 bases, 2 gimel. Kol ma'aminim, everybody believes. So he's saying Kol ma'aminim, and he started thinking to himself, Kol ma'aminim? Really, Kol ma'aminim? How can that be? Why was Mendel in Siberia? Because Jews ratted on him. Who were the Jews that arrested him? Who were the Soviets that arrested him? Jews. The Jews who bought into Soviet stuff and were the most zealous police of the Soviets, gathering up all the Jews. The Jews are always best at that, right? Okay. Like Rav Steinsaltz said on American television, he was asked by Ted Koppel on Nightline, are Jews better than non-Jews? And he said one of the most amazing lines I've ever heard. He said, yes, absolutely. We're better at being good and we're better at being bad. When we're good, we're amazing. When we're bad, we're the worst. All those lowlives in America, the last part of their name is Stein. It's really embarrassing. The guy who supposedly hung himself in his jail, last name Stein. The Hollywood mogul, Stein. Look, fat. Can't you change your last name? Call yourself McCormick. Okay. When we're good, we're the best. We can also be communists, Soviets. Okay. So Rav Mendel was put in jail by those people. He said, Kol ma'aminim? How can it be? But it says. How can it be? But it says. How can it be? But it says. Okay, Mendel's Mendel said, okay, it says, so it has to be. I don't understand it, but it says. So it is, but I don't get it. Okay. Motzei Yom Kippur. He was in his bed. He was on his plank. And he was being eyed by one of the roughest guys in the barrack. Looking at him. And he was scared. And this guy started walking towards him, and he said vidui. He said confession. He thought the guy was coming to kill him. This guy was not there because he was spreading Chassidus all over Russia. That's not why he was in Siberia, this guy. All right, so Mendel said he was scared, and he said vidui. The guy comes up to him and says, Mendel, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah. He said, I want you to tell me if my Yom Kippur was okay. So he looks at him, no, how come this guy was a Jew? This guy was like a really tough guy. He says, okay. He said, well, I was walking by, now you have to, Siberia, what does Siberia mean? Siberia means there's a city of 250,000 people who are all in jail. And then there's a lot of soldiers guarding those 250,000 people. And what's in that city of 250,000 people? All of the means of production of the Soviet Union, all the factories, everything, it's all in those cities. That's where so there's, you're not talking about a jail of, 3,000 inmates. You're talking about a city of 250,000 people, right? I mean, and one after the other, right? The conservative estimate is that Stalin killed 20 million of his own people up there. So now how many people were there? There had to be 25, 30 million, because there were people who made it out. Right? Solzhenitsyn claims it was 60 million. Okay, say 20. Cities. So, that you have to put that in your head. So there's these barracks, but there's all these factories all over cities. He said he was walking by a factory. This guy says to Mendel, I was walking by a factory last week, and two guys were standing outside, and they were talking to each other, saying, Wednesday's Yom Kippur. You should know that Wednesday. How do you know when Yom Kippur is? Right? You get a luach. Wednesday's Yom Kippur. So what's this Yom Kippur? Oh, thank you for telling. So he hears this, and he says to Mendel, it must have been. I don't know how you say Hashgacha Pratis in Russian, but it must have been Hashgacha Pratis that I heard that Wednesday is Yom Kippur, so I figured I should probably fast on Yom Kippur. This guy says to Mendel. So Mendel's just like, okay. But now, for me to get off a day work is not so hard, because, you guys, they know it's Yom Kippur, and they know you guys are trying to get off work for Yom Kippur. So but I just said I didn't feel good. I didn't think I was keeping Yom Kippur. What would they think that? So I just said I didn't feel good, and I didn't go to work. So I stayed in bed and I fasted, but I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know what to say. So the only thing I remember, my father used to say with me, every morning, my father used to say to me, Meida ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim shel chazar devi nishmasi b'chem lo rabbe emunasecha. My father used to say that to me. It's the only thing I know. So I said that over and over and over and over, all day long. Is that okay? Mendel looks at us. It's just fine. Don't worry. It's a good Yom Kippur. And then Mendel, he leaves and goes back to his piece of wood, and Mendel says, Kol ma'amini. They all believe. This guy was a murderer, right? I mean, he was not a nice guy. That's how you. Okay, so that's Kel. Where's that coming from? We'll see, it might come from an even deeper place, but at this point we understand it's coming from Kel. That's what it means. So what does the Rebbe say? So let's read this again. Ani ledodi, ani in a different font. That's part of the edited version, right? I mean, the Rebbe edits into that different font. I mean, it wasn't called a font in those days, but the Rebbe will circle that word. Af. Even though the arousal is from a revelation from above. Why? The revelation from above, it's only the cause, the reason or cause, it can be either, and in this case it's both. Shall yodai, that through that revelation, misgala harotzon apnimi da adam, it's revealed the true inner desire of the person. Wow. So at this point, what just happened? The Rebbe just said an amazing thing. What's a ledodi? Why is it called a ledodi? It's called a ledodi. Yes, there's a revelation from above before I do what I do. And I don't get the order. I don't understand the order. The Rebbe hasn't explained that yet. He will, but we haven't explained that yet. But I know why Elul is a ledodi. Why is it a ledodi? Because what's Elul? What's revealed in Elul? Who Ani is. Who am I? That's what's revealed in Elul. The real Ani is revealed in Elul. And what does the real Ani want? Doidi. As soon as there's a revelation of Ani, then what happens? Doidi. Because that's who I am. Every single one of us, who are we? We're a person who wants a lukus. That's who we are. That's what a Yid is. You can get covered up with all sorts of stuff and not make any impression whatsoever on the conscious reality of that Jew. A Peseder. Not Peseder. Yes, that's reality in Olam Hazeh. But does that mean the Jew isn't who he really is? He's still who he really is. He's a being whose true Ani is ledodi. That's what he wants. He wants elokus. He might be distracted by all sorts of other stuff in Olam Hazeh. I heard this story from Yosef Weinberg, meaning Kli Rishon, because he was one of the people. The Frierdiker Rebbe. Yosef Weinberg was in Warsaw with the Frierdiker Rebbe, running around trying to hide from the Nazis. How he got out, I don't know. How we know how the Frierdiker Rebbe got out. It was a really amazing story, but not for now. But how Rav Yosef Weinberg got out, I'm not sure. But I heard his son is the shaliach in the town that I grew up in, so he used to come visit, and he would tell us. So he told us the following story. When he got out, so he and Shalom Ber Levitin, there was some Yidden who got out. Not Shalom Ber, Shmuel Levitin. Shalom Ber is his son. He was in Seattle, just down the block. Shmuel Levitin. So there were people who, Baruch Hashem, managed to get out, and they were sent by the Frierdiker Rebbe to go around America and try to be Makarav Yidden in America. Frierdiker Rebbe got to America and said, America is not anders, America is no different. And even these Jews in America who were so far away, even they can come back to Yiddishkeit. Fine. So they went to different places. They were in Chicago. I think they also, I think they also ended up in Arizona at some point. I don't know how that happened. They probably went to Los Angeles, even though there wasn't a lot happening in the West. I mean, how many Jews were living in Los Angeles in 1947? Anyway, so they went around. And they wrote a letter. I heard the story from Elsa Weinberg. They wrote a letter to the Frierdiker Rebbe saying it's amazing how the Jews take to Yiddishkeit. And they said a mashal. They said that these Jews, they're like a letter in the Torah that's cracked. And all you have to do is add a little bit of ink, and it's a whole letter again. Seems like a nice mashal, no? So the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote them back and said, he was glad to hear that things were going very, very well, etc., but your mashal is absolutely off. It's wrong. Because a cracked letter is puzzle. A cracked letter is disqualified. It's not a kosher letter. And not only is it not a kosher letter, it puzzles the whole Sefer Torah. If there's one cracked letter in a Sefer Torah, the whole Sefer Torah is puzzled. He said a Jew can never be a cracked letter, because the Jews never puzzle. He said, what's a proper mashal for the Jews you're meeting? It's a letter carved in stone. But what's happened? It's been filled up with a lot of sand and dirt, so you can't see the letter. And you're moving away that stuff. And then what's underneath there? Perfect letter. The letter's perfect. Nothing happened to the letter. Just it's covered up with stuff. Wow. This is going to see a chassid in the red. I thought their mashal is the way he told us. Their mashal. Wow, that's a beautiful mashal. And they said, no. The Rebbe didn't like it at all. So there's such thing as a Jew that's puzzled. So a Jew might have a lot of schmutz covering up who they are. So we all have a lot of schmutz covering up who we are. What's Elul? Elul is the Eibishter. It's like those things that you ever see someone who deals with. They if dust gets on something, they have this little thing that blows off the dust. Okay, so the Eibishter is blowing off the dust, giving us a chance to connect to who we really are. What's Elul? Why is it ani ledodi? Because the true ani is revealed in Elul. And what does the true ani want? Doidi. So yes, when I hear the kings in the field, I naturally want to go. Because that's who I am. I'm shaykh to the king. Let's go a little further and we'll stop. For Yesh Leimer, just to see where we're going next. Now, that's the end of our discussion of ani ledodi. But I mean, that we've now explained pshat in ani ledodi. Ani ledodi is yes, an expression of an arousal from above that brings about a revelation of who ani really is, and then that ani wants to go to doidi, my beloved, which is the Eibishter. Okay. That's ani ledodi. Now we do have a very big issue. So why is ani ledodi first? Isn't the whole idea that now the Rebbe never quoted the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, right? I quoted it. But everybody quotes it, and everybody says, obviously, Elul is different than Pesach. Pesach is Doidi Li Vani Loi, first the Eibishter and then us, and Elul and Tishrei is Ani, and then the Doidi, and it starts with a Veda from below, which is Tshuva, etc. But that's what it is. So why is Ani Doidi first now? I get what Ani Doidi is. I get it. But I don't understand its placement relative to Doidi Li. That's what the Rebbe has to explain in the second half of the month. It's not even the second half, it's just 2 pages. That's what's coming next. Okay? Up until now, we've explained the Ani Ledodi very completely. A whole new revolutionary explanation of the Ani Ledodi. It is not an Asinas Kayach, it's these others, it's arousal from above. Elul is mamish unbelievable, and all I have to do is open up, and I'll come to an appreciation of who I really am, and I want to express that by virtue of acting in a way that is truly representative of the fact that each and every one of us is a godly being. That's all. Okay. Why is it where it is? Okay, we'll start that Sunday morning. I might, those of you who are not on the Chassidus Brings Mashiach group, that's okay, but be in touch with the people who are, because I'm going to Tzfas for Shabbos, so if I leave there very late, I might put a message that there's no Chassidus, and you guys can do, I mean, I won't show up, there's still Chassidus, you guys can do a review on everything you've learned, but there won't necessarily be a shir. But as of now, there's a shir, Sunday morning, okay? Because Shabbos ends early enough. This is a question, if I leave Tzfas at 12 at midnight, so it is going to sort of be a special Shabbos, because, I mean, I'm going to Asem, but it turned into a birthday Shabbos for our son. Our oldest son, he's not our oldest child, he's our oldest son. He's turning 40 next week, and all of his married siblings here in Eretz Yisrael are showing up in Sfas to surprise him. And so we're all going to be eating together. And so Mighty Shabbos might not be short. I mean, everybody's going to be there. I don't know. It might be they decide, okay, we have to have Malava Malka, and we have to get pizza, and we have to get, I don't know what they're going to decide. Or they might decide we're all sick and tired of hanging around each other. Let's go our separate. I have no idea. They generally like each other, Baruch Hashem. Get great pleasure in the fact that they do like each other. Just the Yeshiva gets some pleasure when he sees us treating each other properly. So there's a good chance that it'll be late. So. You know what? There's no, as of now, there's no, I'm thinking about it. There's no shir Sunday morning. If there is, I'll send the message. And please send that message out. Get it. There's a few people who are not on the same game, okay? But it's Sunday morning should be review. We have what to review. We have a whole, now that's good for Izzy, because Izzy's got a brisk Sunday morning. It should be with great success and unbelievable simcha. And it's such a, it's there's nothing like it in the world. An angel's bris, it's like something beyond. Don't look. Bezrat Hashem Izzy will probably be the Sandik. That's generally how it goes.
No, that's already said.
Okay, you are the Sandik.
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem. So you'll be the Sandik, which means that if you were to daven here Sunday morning, you would not say daven.
This is 9:30.
I know, so he's not davening here. But if you see Izzy later in the day, which they might they? Okay, so ask for a bracha, because the Sandik has a very, very powerful ability to give brachas. So ask for a bracha for things. It's Elul is what to ask for. The last amical that we had was a couple of months ago, and it was our son's first boy. So the minhag is generally that